this morning. We're going to go into a while of looking at things from a Dr. Fred Matiang'i point of view, and in terms of the shaping of politics in the nation and what it does look like when we're hurtling quickly towards 2027. Dr. Fred Matiang'i is in the hot seat this morning. Good morning, Dr. Matiang'i.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
You're fine? Mm-hmm. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Like I said, you're in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. There are many a question, many a clarification which are being sought. And of course, let's talk about some of these things as we get into it. But Dennis wants to take you somewhere else in Africa for a moment, and he would love to hear.
So today we are in Sao Tome and Principe. So a country whose population is around 247,000 according to the 2025 stats, and its economy relies on agriculture, tourism and foreign aid. Cocoa is the main export product. The islands was once among the world's leading cocoa producers. So if you're a lover of chocolate or cocoa, perhaps you've had a piece of Sao Tome and Principe. But the proverb that you're getting from this country today, the sun rises for everyone. The sun rises for everyone. How would you interpret that?
Well, everyone has an opportunity, and God favors everyone. There's no one who's discriminated against by God. Everyone has an opportunity. So, I don't know why a human being was created by another human being. We're all created by God, and you'd like to assume that in natural circumstances, everyone has an opportunity at life. Regardless of the quality of life you will lead or what will happen to you, everyone has an opportunity at life. If you're alive, God has something for you. And then later on in this program, I'm going to talk about my experience as the Minister of Education, and that was essentially the philosophy behind cleaning up the education sector, so that you give every child an opportunity, equal opportunity, to be the best that the Lord will enable them to be. And then, by the way, Dennis, I hope you don't mind me saying this. Today, the two tests or assessments for grade 6 and grade 9 are going on. KCSE, some practicals may have started. Since I have this opportunity, I want to seize it immediately to wish all candidates the best in their examinations, that the Lord may enable them achieve the best they can achieve and the best they're able to achieve. Chances are that if this was 7 years ago when I was in Joko House, I probably would be in Timbila, in Taita Taveta, or some place in Galbatula, or in Mutara, somewhere else in the north of Meru, looking at how those tests are going on and so on. But I wish all our children the best. And as I used to say then, and I would like to say this throughout my life, our children are a gift from God. What we must do as a society is show them love and do the best we can, whether they are biologically your children or your guardian or your neighbor's children or children in the environment in which you live. All children, regardless of their direct relationship to you, are gifted to all of us adults. So during this season, say a kind word to a child. You see children at a bus stop trying to get into a bus to go to school, walking by the roadside, help them. Say a kind thing to a child. That warmth, that positivity is how we were brought up, and that's what Africa is known for. And let's extend it to our children. Where you can, where culture and other issues allow, hug a child. I used to say, show children love, because that's how we'll end up bringing up warm, loving adults who are willing to live and know that God loves them. Don't be harsh to kids.
Yes. Yeah. And one would say that is how the sun rises for everybody.
For everyone.
It's interesting that you say that, and I guess that could be a point for us to pivot from, Dr. Matiang'i, because we saw you sit in two different positions in the cabinet, in education, and then also at internal security. And during education, during your stint as a CS for education, we saw that a number of things were streamlined. We saw that in that time, the issues of cheating and issues of dealing with exam malpractice, truth be told, reduced significantly. Now, if you take a hard hand to some things like that, Now, today, we see you gunning for the top seat in the land. Do you feel the same way about how you apply a hard hand in education needs to be applied to leadership for the rest of the country?
Well, thank you. I don't know what a hard hand means, but I would rather say a firm and honest hand to the thing. I mean, the whole issue really is doing the right thing. I've said this over and over again. Leadership is about solving problems. Because why do we elect leaders in the first place if we can do all these things for ourselves? We elect leaders so that they can represent us, they can speak for us, they can act in trust on our behalf on a number of issues. It is leaders who should provide a fair and objective environment for us as a country to thrive, for our people to thrive. The drive at the Ministry of Education when I was in Jogo was exactly that, want to create an environment that gives everyone a fair opportunity, a fair shot at what they're doing, and so that people get their genuine grades that they deserve, that reflect genuine ability. Educationists will tell you that exams, as we normally know them, are a form of test and measurement. What do we test? We test to determine whether the right skills have been acquired. Why do we measure? We measure to determine whether you can move to another level and what you can actually do. That's what this is all about. Many people don't know, actually, that in one of the years, I think 2015, in one of our state universities, the entire class in the Faculty of Engineering failed first year. Because that's how people are coming to terms with the reality of examination cheating. Yep. The entire class in the Faculty of Engineering failed. The professors refused to accept to move those kids to second year. Now, that was a result of those buffed up grades. People turn up, with an A, and they are selected to the Faculty of Engineering and they cannot survive beyond year one. If you ask people honestly, I know people, I know families, I can name people myself, whose families, whose kids I've seen from school X or school Y, who were celebrated, and we were all told even in church to pray for them and thank the Lord that they have scored an A-. And then they were selected to the Faculty of Pharmacy or then they could not survive. And we had gotten to that level of decay and how we collapsed the system. So the drive was to do the right thing. So if that is a hard hand, I would like to apply the same in public life. My dear friends, discipline is destiny. We cannot move forward and do anything in an environment where there is no discipline, where everything goes, where people don't do what they're supposed to do, and so on and so forth. I believe in discipline, in fairness, everybody doing what they're supposed to do. And if we lived that way, we'll be happy, we'll be fine, dandy. Society will move forward. That was my experience in Jogo, and that is what I would like or look forward to be the experience in government if I was so blessed and so lucky to be given the opportunity by the people of Kenya.
Dr. Many have said you managed to handle the irregularities, exam cheatings in education. But critics say that in you handling the exam, you are authoritarian, that you instilled fear rather than reform. What would be your response to that?
There's always another side of argument every time you do something. I've had this several times, by the way. People say, what is authoritarianism or what is dictatorship when you look at it? It's when you force your will or your way in an environment where there's a structured and a systemic framework of doing things. There is nothing that happened in that department or any department where I worked that was outside the established regulations and system. And this is something we all have to come to terms with, honestly. The things are not just going to happen on their own. I hear the arguments people have every day. Oh, we were on the same level with Singapore and Malaysia. Oh, South Korea has done I don't know what. Honestly speaking, it's lovable. So how did they move out of that place? People made sacrifices and they stuck to discipline and did the right thing. That's why their countries are moved forward. These countries we admire around the world because they're developed, they have done very well. Things just don't happen. People have to work for them. Everywhere I went, and I'll give you about 2 examples at the Ministry of Interior. When I arrived at the Ministry of Interior with my colleagues in the security sector, we had a problem of the proliferation of small arms in the country. And you ask senior security people at the Ministry of Interior, for example, at that particular time, do you know how many people have been licensed to carry guns? Private people. We have no record. There is an act. You don't need a new law. There is an act that exists that prescribes how you are supposed to be licensed to carry a firearm, which prescribes that you should actually even go for psychiatric test. There is an act that prescribes, and there are regulations that prescribe on how you can sell guns. People who are licensed to sell guns in Kenya, private people, not government people. We had, I don't know, that 3 people, briefcase, gun sale dealers, and so on and so forth. In an environment like that, how will you control security in your country? So there's no new law that I wrote or anything else. I simply said, here is the act. Every one of you who's holding a firearm, your license consider it cancelled. We do it afresh. And go to the act and do what the act demands you do. Go and bring a psychiatrist test. 5 people, including people who are already in leadership positions, failed a psychiatric test, which means they ought not to actually be having the guns. One of them even murdered someone. So you see, when you say you are autocratic or authoritarian, how you dictated, what is that really? The law was there. We did not write a new law. We're just simply saying, this is the law. Let's go down the prescription of the law. The law says you should produce these documents from KRA. You should produce a certificate of good conduct. You should go and take a psychiatrist test. You should go and do this. Once you have done this, then you can give you a firearm license. And now, because the system before was horribly corrupt, and so many people are carrying guns around, putting them on top of bar tables when they are drinking. They argue over something. And I hear the regime has gone completely back to where it was. Because people are always used to cutting corners, and doing things that are not right. Same thing with the Betting, Licensing and Control Board. We went through the betting. What are the regulations that we have in place that prescribe on who should be licensed to conduct betting in the country? The law is there. It's very clear. It's a question of saying, let's go to the law. What does the law say? And let's walk down the law. So where is a place for authoritarianism? Where is a place for dictatorship? It's basically insisting, we're the ones who have written the law. What does the law say? And even when I raised questions about, academic qualifications and people's academic papers, I used to say, I believe that you can be a very good leader without a PhD. You don't have to have a PhD to be a fantastic, good leader. You go to parliament and write the law that says, for you to qualify for this particular position, these are the qualifications. Then let us follow it. But if you believe we don't need it, then
the law.
Remove it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yet the stumbling block, Dr. Matiang'i, I remember I was in your office one time. I had covered a story from Mount Elgon, and I could see the frustration that you had at the time, especially with this question of illicit firearms, was a situation where the people at the forefront were actually politicians. Because we talk about systems, and in this country we always talk about a system that allows certain things to happen, but it's actually human beings who are part of this, what we call the system. And I recall at the time, because of these stumbling blocks, you want to enforce change, you want to then abide by the law, you want to follow procedures, you want to follow the constitution, but then you hit a snag because there are powers and people that are involved in these who will then eventually frustrate any efforts to try and see, let's do the right thing, right?
That is true. Politics comes in the way in most of those cases. We are here, Dennis, we are here in many respects of our country precisely because of that. We are here because there are people who want to circumvent the law or people who want to live differently other than, what the law prescribes and what the law provides. That's why every time I'm asked the question, what would you do to fight corruption? How would you fight corruption? I tell people, we don't need any new law. We don't need any new institution. They are all in place. The laws are all in place. What we need to do, what we need is good leadership. And then nothing is stronger and does better than leading by example. You cannot tell people to stop doing what you do every day. If you are a thief yourself, you cannot tell people to stop stealing, yet you are the chief thief. The question is, that is how you lead people. You lead people by example, and then you follow the law. The reason why that is a problem, in the case, for example, of firearm licensing, is when people are, of those 5 people who failed psychiatric tests, some of them are in politics. And this is a case where we all agreed that the National Security Council, even President Kenyatta himself said he would subject himself to that, and any member of his family who had a firearm would subject themselves to that, and that is what happened. But you see, there are some who would like to circumvent that. You remember, I was taken to court several times by people who are resisting that. Yet, you can go and amend the law, but as long as the law says this is what you need to do, that is it. Imagine all these societies that we keep admiring, whether they are, in Europe or wherever. Sometimes life boils down to one thing. Let's all follow the law. No one should be favored. Let's all follow the law. If we follow the law that we have in place, we will all be very happy and peaceful. Why should you get away with crime and while others are punished for it? That is a problem. So we had those challenges are there, especially in the security sector, even in the education sector and all sectors of our country. Sometimes our problem is the very low level of political accountability in our country. The political practice in our country is characterized by a very low level of accountability. People say things and do things and get away with them. They don't come back to be held to account to say, why did you say what you say, provide facts about this thing, and so on and so forth. That is part of the problem. And as you're saying, Dennis, it's true. We had serious challenges, especially in mopping up and cleaning up this small arms business because of the politicians. But I think, considering the context and the environment in which we are operating, the amount of guns we collected was fairly significant. And we were able to bring down the rate of what you may call small arm-driven crimes very, very significantly. If you look at the data, it shows clearly that for 2 or 3 years, we were consistently, going down in terms of numbers. There was a time I was actually shocked that for about a week or so we would go through in Nairobi, for example, the reports of crime are less than 20 or less than 30. And that was as a result of that particular drive. So I wish it was sustained, because that is the only way you can deal with some of these aspects of small crime.
Okay.
There are spin-offs to that, which I don't have time to go into that. If you have a reckless and governed regime of firearm licensing in a country, it also encourages criminal elements within the security sector to misuse their firearms. But that's for another day.
Okay. So there are many things, of course, that need to be looked into. But I guess that then allows us to segue then from this question, is that based on some of the things that you've already alluded to, you want to be president of Kenya?
I would like to be.
Why?
Not I want, I would like to be.
You would like to be president of Kenya?
Yes.
Why?
Well, you see, because I want to fix these challenges that we have. Because when everywhere I go in this country, and I talk to people, for example, in a public service, almost every day, each one of us interact with public servants of one kind or the other. I meet police officers, for instance, almost every day, and the horror stories that people tell you are very frustrating for a country our size. And I want to allude to only 3 things, which I hope you will give me time to discuss at some level of detail. It is actually very shameful what's happening in our country, especially how we are operating in this region. And this is a problem with our foreign policy. I'm even ashamed to discuss this, that, citizens of my country, Bob Matiang'i and Nicholas Oyo, are arrested by a government in our neighborhood, and then we sleep and wake up with a government where government officials, including the Minister of Foreign Affairs, are not able to actually say succinctly where is Bob Matiang'i and where is Nicholas Oyo, and make excuses and so on. And there are many issues related to that. I am concerned about our image. I'm concerned about how we are faring. I'm concerned about the status of respect that we had in this region and how our image is being battered, all of which are as a result of bad management of our foreign policy and bad management of the country. This needs to be fixed. For a long time since independence, either because of the non-aligned movement activities or because of our belief in multilateralism, we have maintained very solid relations with our neighbors, because our trading life begins with our neighbors, and we work well with our neighbors. What we are seeing going on in the country, where we are hobnobbing with terror groups that have been considered and labeled criminal organizations in other countries, is not fair. This needs to be fixed. If you talk to any civil servant in the country, if you met them today, they will tell you about how the morale in the civil service is at its lowest ebb because of intense politicization of the public service. Meritocracy and so on has been thrown out through the window. The level of confusion where public servants are overtaxed, they are not given an opportunity to make the decisions they need to make and so on. We are destroying our country. These things need to be fixed. The worst of our challenges, of course, is in the social sectors, like in education. I don't know anyone you will meet who will tell you what is going on in the education sector. I mean, the level of confusion is unbelievable. I don't want to go into the granular details.
But if I could ask a question that perhaps would go into the granular details, and I know there are three that you mentioned, and this is the first one. You speak about the disappearances of Bob Matiang'i and Nicholas Oyo in Uganda. But we also have to point to the fact that whether it's speculation from me who asks a question or the issues that Kenyans will bring up of people who disappeared while you were the CS for Interior, and people who turned up dead and for whom questions about their whereabouts were never answered. Would this be the same thing?
No, you see, the contexts are totally different, and I will even answer that one very directly and tell you this. In every security situation anywhere on earth, even in the United States of America, in the UK and so on, security incident will happen. Somebody will be murdered by either a police officer or by a criminal, or something will go wrong somewhere. Where the line is drawn is where investigations are done. And as I said, every time when I was in the Ministry of Interior, we got the directions investigations point us. Mm-hmm. And if the direction that the investigations point us is to Dennis Okari, regardless of his status in society, we go there. And we ensure that he faces the law. In cases where we have had murders or criminal activities that have not been resolved in our country to this day, in some files are still open. In others, I have personally called out very openly for a public inquiry.
Did you push under your watch for those things to happen?
I did. I pushed for investigations. I counted the other day, by the way, because I was going through records another day on this issue of extrajudicial killings and disappearances. I counted, I checked my diary, my old diary, and discovered that I appeared before the Security Committee in Parliament 3 times. I think 3 or 4 times on this matter of forced disappearances and so on. In some cases, it had to do with the returnees from Al-Shabaab training in Coast and parts of Northeastern in Kenya. And in some others, in fact, I remember it's only one incident where a member of parliament provided actual information and reports on people who had disappeared, and they had disappeared because they had gone to a police station, and we launched the investigation at that time, working also with other agencies that we work with in the region. Mm-hmm. Where there is doubt and where there is information that is not available on how people have disappeared or people's lives have been lost, it is the responsibility of government to conclude the investigations, to pursue as detailed investigations as possible, and I would say it again, go the direction the investigations will point us to. If the direction of those investigations say it is the Minister for Interior, for heaven's sake, let's go there and face the law.
Is it possible? I'm sorry, I'm going to stick on this point because it's a sticky one and it's a sensitive one.
Go ahead.
How do we expect, if it's possible, that the chief suspects in disappearances, whether they be forced, whether they're returnees from conflict, whether they're returnees from terrorist activities, whatever the case may be, if the chief suspects are security agencies, whether it is the police, whether it's a special branch of anti-terrorism, whomever it is, do we really expect that they will be prosecuted and or investigated by they themselves? Does that happen?
It does, and let me explain this very slowly. Crimes such as getting involved in people's disappearances and murders are not covered or helped by the statute of limitation. In other words, it doesn't matter how long it takes, you will still be investigated. There's no one who sits in public office eternally. If you are seated on those files there because today you are the Minister for Interior and you cannot be investigated, you will not be a Minister for Interior eternally. You will leave at some point. And when you leave, people will have an opportunity to investigate you and find out what exactly happened. But in our case in Kenya, there is no one who is above the law. I was a minister for 10 years. I was not above the law once. In fact, the stories I tell these days, some of the very enlivening experiences I remember when I was in government are conversations with, for example, Professor Githu Muigai, our Attorney General, or retired Justice Kiara Kariuki, who also became our Attorney General since 2018. And they would tell me, as a minister, and they would tell so many of my colleagues in cabinet, you don't have powers to do what you're doing. The law does not allow you to do that. Professor Githu Muigai would tell you, I'm sorry, your sentiments may be right, but that is all. It's just your sentiment. You have nothing else back what you are going to do. So, and you cannot act on the basis of your sentiment. Goodbye, look for the law. So the point I'm making is this. There's no one really above the law. What we need to do in our country, and I asked police officers when I was the minister to do the same, and I asked them to this day and the other people, if you have reason to believe, because you see, let me ask you a question. If you are a minister and you beat up your wife and she reports you at the police station, why can't police investigate that matter? And indeed, if you have engaged in violence against your wife, you should be prosecuted. Your status should not allow you to get away with it. So no one is above the law. That's why I'm saying all these matters where we have inconclusive investigations and so on, let them be investigated. And I keep saying the same thing. The case of Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, you see, what hurts is when the government and those who are responsible become either impervious or they don't care about what we think. Nobody issues a statement about it. Nobody bothers. Nobody even says it does a diplomatic note and so on. It worries everyone because at least let us know we are investigating, the disappearance of Bob Njagi, or we are investigating the whereabouts of Nicholas Oyo. Let us know that we have asked questions of the government in Tanzania how you would whip or torture. Our citizens when they came there. But investigations, asking questions, government is there to act in trust of the people. Even these cases that we are making reference to here, Dennis, let investigations happen. And I will still say, let investigations happen and let us go the direction investigations will point at.
The issue with investigations, because this thing is so systemic, by the time we're getting to Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo in Uganda, back here at home, we've had issues over the years. And because you're talking about investigations being carried and no one is above the law and regardless of status, it's a question of influence. And what we've witnessed in this country over the past few years is a situation where, and I'll give a couple of examples, where people have been abducted, people have disappeared, people have been taken from their homes. And you will hear stories that they've been abducted from their homes with vehicles that are foreign plates. Other people are saying these are masked people. And then we expect the same government to come tell us, okay, where did our people go to? And all you'll be told right from the top, and this is from the head of state, saying, we don't know who took those people. The police, Inspector General of Police, is asked the same question. Where are people going to? Who is taking these people? And the police, even in court, will say, I don't know. The DCI boss, equally, will say, I don't know. That's the investigative unit. Then behind the scenes, you have people who, again, are arrested. Some have died while in police cells. The case of Albert Ojwang. And you trace all this, and when you trace it, you realize that where a call was coming from is from somebody you'd call quote-unquote influential, who's a Deputy Inspector General of Police. And when investigations are carried forward by institutions like IPOA, the investigations take weeks or even take months because these are nobodies. These are not people who have any big standing in society. And so the cases will grow cold and people will forget. And these people will still stay in office and nobody can do anything about it. So we have IPOA, we have the ODPP, which time and time again has handled files and cases of people who are suspected to be behind this. And at the moment as we speak, it is the state, and it's very clear, it is the state that has been involved in the abductions locally and the kidnappings and the disappearances of people. And Bob Njagi, was it last year, disappeared, the Kitengela 3, and it was local. By the time he's disappearing in Uganda, we've already set a precedent locally. So it's a systemic failure, and people are getting away with it.
Dennis, I always like leveling with people and being very honest about this. I am not deluded that we have the best of all worlds. That everything is effective. We would investigate these things in 2 or 3 months and get to the bottom of the matter, especially when it comes to security matters such as the ones we are talking about. But I want to assure you about one thing. Slowly as we go forward, I was the Minister for Interior when Pepe Pendo happened in Kisumu. Mm-hmm. And I remember that night, a very senior journalist in Kenya calling me, and the conversation did not end because he broke down, and cried about the brutality and the cruelty that happened. I don't want to go into that matter because it's already in court, and there were senior people who were involved in that matter. People also thought and behaved that way at that particular time, thinking that a solution was going to be found. People are before a court of law on that kind of matter. Because of, as I said, very poor and very low level of political accountability in our countries, which I agree with you. Some of these challenges will be there and will persist. But we also need to be persistent in terms of seeking to do the right thing and seeking the right for all of us. Because that way then, we will finally improve and clean up our society. We can't walk away. We cannot give up. There's no room for giving up. Yesterday, I was, thoroughly entertained watching the speech of the new president in Botswana. They have just jailed their former Minister of Finance, on corruption and saying the forensic work that is going on and the people is going to involve and so on. I was telling myself, at some point, that guy may have thought that the law would not catch up with him at some point. I am aware of another African country that is about to jail another Minister of Finance, in fraudulent cases and so on that I am aware of. We will make small steps, 1, 2 steps today, 3 steps tomorrow, but we'll get there. We cannot give up because that's why we are raising these questions. That's why we are asking everyone who is involved to do their part. My dear friends, let me tell you, if people gave up in the struggle for the independence of this country, we probably would not be independent today. But, people started with those incremental stages. They fought, one battle at a time. A few of them were killed here and there by the colonial government, but they stayed the course. If you look at the journey of this country's democracy, Masinde Muliro is not here today, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga is not here today. All those wonderful people are not here today. Some of those who are here, like former Chief Justice Dr. Willie Mutunga, have got scars to tell. Raila Odinga was gone to sleep recently. He's now not here, but they paid the ultimate price and stayed the course. This thing doesn't come easy. And I think for all of us as citizens of Kenya, the responsibility we have is to always hope for and work for a better tomorrow. It is not going to be easy. I am not deluded that it's going to be a walk in the park. But let us stay the course.
You've talked about Botswana and a minister jailed. Yeah. If you are president, you're elected president, because Kenyans expect accountability, and that's why Gen Z is on the streets. Integrity, accountability. We have a lot of corruption cases involving top politicians, people who are in cabinet. Will you jail corrupt officials? That is going back to the same accusations you're having of autocracy and so on. Mm-hmm. I will not be the judge on the magistrate. I will be the president. But I will not interfere. The law will follow its course. Because all that needs to be done in a country, you do not need new laws in Kenya. You do not need new institutions. We have all of them in place. What we need to do is reduce political interference and politicization of the justice system and let the law take its course and let those independent officers and independent institutions investigate. Sometimes I get very frustrated. I guess I'm not the only one, but, people look at these things all the time. We wrote a constitution that is very liberal, and we created officers that we call independent officers. Independent officers because the people can act without necessarily acceding to political pressure. The Inspector General of Police, the Data Commissioner, and so on and so forth. All these are supposed to be independent officers, ODPP, and so on and so forth. If they acted independently and they remained obstinate and say they're going to do the right thing and move forward, they will probably get us somewhere. And the challenge is not just to the executive branch of government. It's also to those others who are in this, what we are calling independent officers. The president in Botswana has not written a new law.
He hasn't even gone to Parliament to ask Parliament to enact a new law. He has basically said the institutions that are here, do your job. And the investigators have gone on and done their job. All I promise Kenyans is if I get the opportunity, I'll do the same thing I was doing at the Ministry of Interior. Let's go to the law. What does the law say?
But
and stick with the law. Because if we stick with the law, you have all your answers. I don't have to write a new law or tell you this is what you need to do. What does the law say? Do you qualify? You don't qualify. The law says you don't qualify. Thank you, goodbye.
Dr. You say that if you're given an opportunity to be President of the Republic of Kenya, you'll do the same as you did as the Cabinet Secretary for Interior. But that will also be remembered as a point where you said doing the right thing, but at that time, court orders were disrespected. Especially in a case of one Miguna, where he was deported from the country despite numerous court orders that were disrespected and were not followed. So if you speak of following, doing what you did at the ministry, are you not looking at repeating the same mistakes that you're talking about correcting?
You know, my brother Dennis, let me tell you, we are here as a country, and I want to persuade you, we are here as a country precisely because of what you yourself are demonstrating right now. People always operate on half-truths, rumors, gossip, and so on. A three-judge bench at the Court of Appeal 1 month ago ruled that I did not disobey any court order on this matter. Got me out. Which court order are you talking about? You know, sometimes I would like even you guys in media to be sometimes serious about the things you say. Say, order number this on this particular matter was defied, and therefore this is the decision of which court order was defied. Because I hear this question all the time. People talk about the latest matter is a matter that was at the Court of Appeal that was ruled on by 3 judges a month ago, involving me, Boynet, and Kialangwa on a particular order. What order was defied? Because you see, because it's fashionable, and you know, this is the way in which we've done politics in our country. We come up when we either don't like people or like people, whatever the case is. We bandy around, you know, things, accusations that you know you cannot prove and so on, because either you want to project a particular image or you want to do you know, achieve some end which I don't know. The truth of the matter is this: I have never lived all my life. I have never lived above the law. And by the way, I have been ordered several times by the court to abandon decisions I made even as minister, where people have gone and bleeded on the basis of rights, on the basis of regulations, and the court has ruled the minister is wrong. The reforms I wanted to carry out on the firearm licensing took forever because we were in court, and the court was ruling against us every so often. Digital migration, we went all the way to the Supreme Court because the High Court ruled against us, the Court of Appeal ruled against us, and we still persisted and went to the Supreme Court. So I couldn't do that if I didn't believe in the process of the law. And armed with a very solid, and you know, Gith Muigai is the ultimate, you know, solid, brilliant lawyer, very respected professor of law in the country. And Githu insisted we go step by step. I stayed the course all the way to the Supreme Court before we effected migration. So those things do not exist. What happens in most cases is that, you know, people find it easier to say, you know, bandy things around. I was accused of, I don't go to Parliament, and so on. You know, by the way, Parliament, if you look at our constitutional architecture as it is right now, I don't know whether Kenyans take time to analyze these things and read them very well. The most powerful of the 3 institutions of government in our country is Parliament. Because Parliament, as a minister, Parliament is the one that will sack you without recourse. Even the president will not save you if Parliament decides to sack you. And it's not thinkable that you would defy Parliament. You know, the question is, you would be called to Parliament, and when you are, for example, in the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government, you have 21 things calling upon you, and all the time, when you are not able to go, you mediate with the committee. You know, can I come on Tuesday instead of Monday? I am supposed to go to Addis Ababa for a meeting with the government of Ethiopia on this day. Can you indulge me to come on Friday when I'm back from Addis? And then people say, no, he refused to come. You cannot refuse to go to Parliament because, as I said, Parliament is a very powerful institution. According to our constitution today, they will sack you without recourse. Even if the president loves you, how he will not save you if Parliament sacked you. So, you know, we, as I said, we are here because we've conducted our public affairs with this level of sometimes laziness, recklessness, where people tell us things, which don't make sense, and we believe them and clap for them and get away with them. Or where people come and tell you, Dennis defied court orders, and you can't even say which orders.
So the Dr. question is, at the time the court gave several orders that Dr. Miguna be given his passport at the time. And on these numerous occasions, Miguna was never given his passport. So what was the reason behind him not giving his passport?
By the way, a lot of people who point that out, again, Dennis, is because they don't take time to read and understand issues the way they are. And I want to restrain myself from being very descriptive in a negative manner on this particular issue. There is a ruling by Justice Lenaola when he was in the High Court. I mean, go to the records and read it. There is a ruling by Justice Lenaola prescribing how you would regain your citizenship when you had renounced it. Because in the old constitution, we did not have a provision where you would be a citizen of two countries. And many countries insisted that for you to be given citizenship of another country, you had to renounce your own citizenship in another country, in your country. So then this matter was so contested, it went to court. There is a High Court ruling directing the Ministry of Interior and the Immigration Department, literally providing a prescription on how that would be done. So the question is this: you act this way, you violate that ruling. You act that way, you violate it, you have problems with the ruling. We ourselves came up with a very simple form at the Department of Immigration to enable Kenyans who had renounced their citizenship because of those challenges of the 80s and so on, to gain citizenship very easily. The form will take you probably a minute and a half to fill. By the time that drama was unfolding here at the airport, about 200,000 Kenyans had already gained their citizenship through that simple little form, that is some miserable little form that people would just sign and go along with it. Now, this brother travels on a Canadian passport all the way to Nairobi. And when he gets there, he says he wants to enter using an ID card. Of course, it's astounding. Of course, you know yourself that cannot happen. Then the government goes all the way, including moving Yaya House to the airport so that we could give him the passport. The director of immigration himself and everybody else. And he refuses to sign that little funny, miserable form. And then the government does everything, including sending former Prime Minister Raila Odinga to the airport to persuade him. And then talking to the Canadian High Commission in Nairobi, because he had a Canadian passport, asking the Canadian High Commissioner to extend consular services to him. So in case he feared that he would be arrested, since he arrived here on a Canadian passport, he could not be arrested because of that. So we told the Canadian High Commission, extend consular services to him. We'll give him a passport as long as he clears with a Canadian passport from the airport. Within 24 hours, he will have his passport. He refuses to do those kinds of things. We are spending time as a country on an individual. Clearly, isn't it obvious the challenges we are dealing with as it is? Why on earth would you refuse to give someone a passport when already 200 and something thousand Kenyans had already regained their citizenship? So it is an over-dramatization or, an over-enactment of something very simple and petty, to be honest with you. And we have lived on that. And I want to urge you and urge the rest of us in the Kenyan media and Kenyan citizens that as a country that has got serious challenges that wants to move ahead, this kind of pettiness and small trivialization of things is what is holding us back in development. We're spending our time on nothing. Actually, what we're dealing with is almost nothing. And you can tell clearly from even the way you yourself are asking the question that you haven't seen the history of this. Read Justice Lenaola's ruling in the High Court when this matter began and all that. All of us were bound. In fact, at one time, I want to challenge you. At one time, when that drama was unfolding, I spoke to then Senator James Orengo. I mean, whom, as you know, is one of our top-notch lawyers. And Senator Orengo was asking me, now, Fred, how do we resolve this? I told him, my brother, I mean, you are a last resort guy to go to in terms of law. I mean, no one can wipe dust on your shoes in terms of law. Can you advise me? Just tell me some excuse under the law I would use to get that man out there. Nobody wants that drama.
Under the law.
Under the law. Orengo couldn't. He said, he has to sign that little paper, whatever they will give him.
Okay.
Because we were willing to, everybody was willing. As I said, we moved in our house there. The director of immigration, can you imagine where How much more commitment does one have to show you than moving the immigration department to the airport to help you?
You, as answering the question in terms of why you would like to be president, we have been on the number one for a while. There's a number 2 and 3, you said. What's the number 2 that would guide your thought process into action?
I mean, provide the country better management, honestly. I mean, just how a country of our size and the resources and endowment, if we were to be very honest, and this is not hatred or whatever. I mean, people always accuse me and say, oh, I don't hammer the government enough. I don't insult the government enough and so on. I keep saying, insults are not a solution to any problem. And I don't know of any leader anywhere on earth who has been respected because of the prolific insults they used against others. The challenge is the way in which we are managing ourselves as a country. With all these challenges that you see, and how we are spending our resources. We closed schools the other day, and we are sending capitation to schools at the 11th hour. The day is done. There's no 11th hour in this case. The day was done. Yeah, the day was done.
Money was sent.
Yeah, when that is happening, and you can see these are problems of management. I find it very interesting that, we live in a country where, for me, having served as a minister, the most rudiment thing that a minister can do is look the cameras and tell you what they are doing in their ministry and why they are doing it. Now, all this drama flowing in the streets about she, and so on, no one tells you anything coherent about what they are doing. The university funding model can only be explained by one person, the president. And the frustration out there is amazing. I was in Kisumu the other day meeting with the student leaders and a lot of young people. When a university student in a country that has been independent for over 60 years tells you they do not know whether they will do their exams, they do not know whether they will graduate next year. Next week, the university lecturer strike will end the 4th week or probably the 5th week. And we are going around as if nothing is going wrong. Are we sure, actually, that the teaching is going on in our state universities? All these issues are related to bad management of our country. We are selling the KCC, KICC, Kenya Pipeline. I don't know whether our children or our children's children are going to find anything in this country. We will have sold everything, we would have sold ourselves out without proper explanation and without proper guidance on what needs to be done. This is a problem of bad management of the country. When I talk to dairy farmers, and then I've been engaging some key actors in that sector, even the sales for KCC by 2013, when Uhuru Kenyatta became president, was about 3 billion. By 2020, 2021, the sales had gone to 21 billion. Why are we actually selling KCC? And when you look at these things, people are not foolish. You can see clearly that the interest is probably stripping public assets and transferring public assets to private hands in a very convoluted process. And then we are selling assets in this wanton manner of messing up the country. Tea farmers, if you know, the tea farmers across the country are... The ones who come from my part of the country are really frustrated because of the bonus. Dairy farmers have not been paid by KCC for 3 months. All these are issues of management, the way we are managing the country. I honestly think I would like to provide better management for this country. Coalesce resources, reduce the wastage that we have in the public service, and provide the country better, predictable, trustworthy management. Government that Kenyans can trust. Because when you wake up in the morning and tell people things, you tell them things that are going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with you failing to do certain things. You can level with the public and tell them, sorry, this is what I wanted to do, it did not work, and this is the reason why it did not work. Are you fine as a Kenyan to read the kind of stories we are reading about drugs arriving in Mombasa and drugs moving around the country? Are you happy with the rates of suicide that we are seeing in the country amongst young people, the rate of hopelessness and so on? Are you happy with the cyber security law that we have just enacted? Is that the way we should manage ourselves in this day and age? All these are problems of management. And thirdly, of course, provide opportunity, real opportunity for Kenya to go where it ought to go. because we are a country that is capable of doing 10 times better than we are doing right now. If we had stayed on the trajectory we were in 2022, we probably would be doing very well. I want, and I've seen clips doing rounds from my speeches in 2022, I warned that the level of money laundering going on in the country, the wash activities going on in the country, we will end up with a criminal enterprise colonizing part of government. We have been grey listed by the Americans. The EU has declared us an insecure financial transactions environment, and I don't think that is news to anybody. Observers can see clearly the kind of things we're engaged in. We are accused of all manner of things. It astounds me that, newspapers would wake up in the morning and put up a story about, we are selling firearms to rebel groups in our neighboring countries. And to this day, the government has said nothing. Because you see, we citizens cannot say anything. We don't know. It's the government that should come up and say, are we selling firearms to rebels in neighboring countries and so on. And of course, the issues I alluded to earlier about the education sector and the frustrations that the country is facing, the issues I raised earlier about our foreign policy and the way we are handling ourselves in the region. Surely, these things require to be fixed so that we give Kenyans a better opportunity to go where the country needs to go.
So, Dr. Fred, we know where the country needs to go. We know the problems that we are facing as a country. Let's talk about some practical interventions here. And in this case, I'm assuming you are president. At the moment, the biggest issue, and you said you've talked to public people in the public service and the frustrations people are going through. The economy is a very big subject. And when we speak about economy, the country is in debt, unmanageable debt. We continue getting ourselves into this dark hole of debt. There's a report today in the local dailies where 80% of low-income earners are reporting drops in revenues. So you have 8 in 10 Kenyans living, and this is just in urban settings, where they say their income has either stagnated or declined. Pay slips are being raided every time and time again. We have people who are in the other sectors, SMEs. People can't start a business. There's an interview here, and if you can remind me, just to sell mineral water. Somebody opening a small kiosk to sell mineral water. The number of licenses they need and permits.
To the amount of 317,000 shillings.
Over. And you've not started selling anything. You've not set up equipment. That is just licensing and permits. What is draining the pockets of very many households? High cost of living in electricity. We're talking about transport costs, the pay slips, and all these heavy taxes that at this point, it's even difficult to pinpoint what's going to happen next month, what other taxes are going to be proposed. These are conversations that still go on in Parliament. What are you going to do as President of the Republic in Kenya practically to bring down the cost of living, and how are you going to deal with the debt question?
Thank you. We are dealing with or suffering the consequences of poor governance, the consequences of mismanagement and corruption, wastage in public resources. So let's begin this step by step. We'll start with the question of debt and how we use resources that we borrow. And on this particular one, by the way, I want to be very frank and level again, as I said, with the people of Kenya. It is not always fair to assume and blame others on things that are straightforward. Kenya's history with debt management has been horrible. I mean, even when we were in government within the 10 years. I remember I chaired the Cabinet Committee on coordination of projects and so on. One problem we discovered at that time is that there didn't exist, we were building one at that time, an accurate, reliable, effective debt register for the country to know who's borrowing what and so on. The chaos of procuring debt and the chaos of procuring international development assistance in the country was a bureaucratic problem, which first of all needs to be addressed and need to be sorted out, so that there are ministries in this country where people have committed resources and they're supposed to be putting counterpart funds that they don't have. But as soon as you have signed this agreement, the interests accrue and you're expected to make payment and so on. So, number one, clean government is the solution to this. What I mean by clean government is transparent. I don't know whether you have read the Auditor General's report on the e-citizen portal and what's going on. I mean, it's a horror story, how we are managing public resources. Because what essentially the Auditor General is saying in that report is that we are looting public resources through that e-citizen and moving them and banking them in places where they ought not to be banked. How then will you manage debt? How will you pay your debts if that is what is happening? So number one is managing government in a clean, transparent manner that's mindful of those challenges and addresses them fully. I promise. On this particular one, I can promise. I will not manage government this way. It will be government in the sun with brutal frankness and sincerity on some of the things we are doing, and we'll avoid this monkeying that we are seeing going on around.
So you're saying there's no compromise. Sorry, if you could just remember that number 2. But you're saying there's no compromise on not following the law or not doing the right thing. That in an event where something is going on where the right thing is not being done, then there is no apology for, maybe this was the situation, or maybe there's no apology. You do the right thing, or you do the right thing.
I will not make excuses. But because you see, if I cannot respond to you, I cannot be accountable to you, I cannot answer your questions on things that I'm responsible for, I ought not to be there. Honestly, I mean, whether you call that autocracy or dictatorship, what have you, I don't care. But the truth of the matter is that if I sit in a responsible position, I have to be responsible and answer the questions you ask me from that position. I used to tell people, when we were in government, we had challenges at some point. We were divided in government because of politics and so on. Politicians or members of parliament would come to me from, for example, Rift Valley at that time because we had problems. And I tell them, I don't care the political differences people have out there, but I am your Minister for Interior and I'm paid to be here. So I'm paid to serve you. So I serve you first and then anything else follows. If I don't want to serve you, I just get the hell out of here, go sit down under a tree in Kisi.
Okay.
That is it. So the question is, there is no excuse, there is no compromise when it comes to doing the right thing.
Okay,
number 2, deal with the bureaucracy in government. We had started a project in government. It's supported by the World Bank, because the World Bank used to have the Ease of Doing Business Index, how you fare in terms of dealing bureaucracy and how bureaucracy affects business. I actually thought, when I saw some of my former colleagues like Adan Mohammed and so on have been appointed to this government, I thought that this administration was going to follow through on that, so that you scan through government all through and see the cost of bureaucracy on doing business and rent seeking and all these inefficiencies and how they affect government. Now, that chaotic licensing regime you are describing, where you go through 4, 5, 6 licenses, you are spending about 300,000 and so on. The obvious reason why that is being done is because people are looking for rent-seeking opportunities. You cannot grow business in an inefficient environment like that. So it's a question of sitting down. We were having very fervent discussions with the Council of Governors at that time to deal with licensing as itself a barrier to successful investment in the country. Because you see, if you're moving goods from Nairobi to Kisumu, you pay levies in Nakuru, pay levies in Kericho, pay levies in Homa Bay. I mean, it's silly. It doesn't make sense. So, and the Council of Governors has done a fantastic job, actually, themselves trying to harmonize this. Maybe they need better cooperation from the national government in doing this. And if you cleaned up that bureaucracy, reduced the rent-seeking opportunities, you will engender and help businesses to thrive. Thirdly, you cannot grow business where corruption reigns supreme. I have talked to investors. I've met people. I met 2 American companies. People want to invest in Kenya and they are serious people. They arrive here and they asked shares in their businesses by government bureaucrats. They asked, Yawazeni Ngapi, and so on. And you will not deal with these issues if people are acting on this on your behalf. This again is a matter on which I say dictatorship or no dictatorship, I don't care. If you are a cabinet minister and you get engaged in those kinds of things, you are sacked, you go. Because then how will the country move forward if people arrive here, they want to invest in things and they're being asked for shares in their companies? You talk to private sector investors in this country, some of them will tell you the horrors they go through. You have noticed that private sector organizations in this country, Kenya Private Sector Alliance and the others, have become so timid. People are not making statements, they are quiet. Because they're going to government meetings, they are lectured, they are told off, they are what have you. Yet you cannot develop an economy of any country, especially ours, without there being very clear and effective collaboration between private sector and public sector.
Okay.
And those conversations must exist. When we were in government, the president chaired the private sector round table. And it was a round table, indeed, we listened to private sector. We may not do everything the private sector wants done at that particular time, but we listened to each other. And I can tell you today, without fear of contradiction, if we didn't work with the private sector, we would never have succeeded to fight corona the way we did. Because a lot of heavy lifting was done by the private sector. So there must exist an effective relationship of trustworthy and engagement between the private sector and the public sector. If it is not there, private sector people are being asked for shares. Private sector manufacturers and traders, some of them are being discriminated against. If you raise up your hand or you ask a question, KRA is at your door, and to terrorize you and so on, how will businesses grow? So these things have got to be addressed. Then the animal in the room that we have all to confront is wastage in government. Honestly speaking, for a country our size and the economy that we have, it is shocking the level of wastage in government. And by the way, on this particular one, I want to be very frank and say this. I don't want to be dishonest and blame this administration and say, it's just that the scale they have taken it is new. The tradition of government, in most cases, has been more political and less technocratic. So that you see, that's why, all manner of political stillborns are appointed to critical places. A guy goes there, runs a thing, can't win, comes here, is given a serious technical responsibility and so on. If you appoint 3 people in a ministry in job group U, the PS is there, how are those people going to deliver? Because a friend of mine from the development group was asking me a question. I received 2 letters from advisors in the ministry and another one from the PS. And they are telling me different things. So who do I deal with in that ministry? This bureaucratic untidiness, which is related to wastage of public resources, is why we have all those problems of debt and so on. Finally, politicization of public service will kill us. We can say these things and talk about it until the cows come home. We are not saying this because we hate anybody. The truth is very clear out there. Politicization of the public service will finally kill this country. Kenya has thrived and done very well over the years because of an institutionalized public service. Talk to Mudaura. Talk to Kimemia, who are heads of public service before. And all these people are built and work through a public service system that delivers, because public servants, once they're given the requisite support they need, the system works and they will deliver services. The moment you start parachuting people because of where they come from one position to another and so on, that level of disorganization and politicization of the public service causes you this. 1, public servants withdraw. Because they don't know what they are not going to do, they will not exercise their energy or creativity or ability to resolve any problems. 2, others start looking for rent-seeking opportunities because you see, they don't know how long they are going to be there. 3, the incompetence that you have brought from your village and you have brought in because of their political affiliation will not deliver anything for you. So you keep seeing horrors every time here and there. Finally, the country pays the ultimate price in the long run. So the pay slip and the Kenyan workers are paying the brunt of it. The only source of revenue is taxing the payslip. The payslip has become the greatest enemy of the administration. And if your public servants who are taxed left, right, and center, they are demoralized. Services are not being provided them. Some of them in their cadres, like the police service, the insurance cover is a joke in the process. So how do you expect these people to have the requisite morale to deliver and move the country to the next level? So politicization of the public service is our greatest enemy. And I honestly believe that's why I don't believe in insulting people. And when I don't insult people, it doesn't mean that I don't know what needs to be done. Insults are not a solution, and insults are not a strategy to how we are going forward. How we are going forward is confronting these challenges we have and solving the problems that we have in the country. Talk to each other as people who love our country and say, this kind of nonsense has got to come to an end. We can manage this country better than we are managing it.
So, Dr. there is still on matters economy. There has been conversations around odious debt, and that is a big problem for the country. That economists have said it is a problem that needs to be handled ASAP. That coupled together with the problem of pending bills that has choked businesses in the country. As a president, how would you address these two issues?
By the way. For our debt situation right now, there are various instruments that you can use to deal with our debt situation. But to be frank with you, in my honest view, many of them are going to be steeped in our level of trust and confidence people will have in our economy and in our management. If we don't have the requisite trust for people to invest in your country, then your discussions on whether or not you are going to restructure debt are going to become very problematic. We can restructure some of our debt. We can renegotiate some of our debt. We can rework some of the programs and activities that we have. But a lot will depend on, Dennis, when we are grey listed, as an insecure financial transactions environment, how are you going to sit down with groups of financiers and convince them that we are an environment that we can actually sell some debt to you and we are going to come through on this? Because people are reading these things we are reading here. This movement of drugs and so on, the whole world is seeing them. How are we going to succeed? You see, I keep saying this all the time. My friends, forget about the elections and so on. There's a time we must always have a conversation as Kenyans because this is our only home on earth. And then we have to resolve the challenges that we have in our country today. And then insulting each other is not going to get us where we are going. How will you manage to convince people when they will look at the wastage that you are involved in across the board? You are contracting projects at 3 times the cost. And every time the things come out, no one can understand. I want to use 3 examples to demonstrate what I'm saying. This administration has engaged in what you may very easily describe as digitalizing corruption. For every digital activity in government that was going on, that was going to lead us to more efficiencies and saving resources, they abandoned it in favor of new tenders and new opportunities for themselves to make money. Name is the National Education Information Management System, worked on with the World Bank, that was supposed to give us accurate data on our schools. The project was way ahead. When we worked on it, there was nothing wrong with the project. Then the government abandons it and comes up with something called chemis or whatever it is. In doing that, the level of wastage and all those resources that have been spent already on NEMIs are gone down the drain. They're lovable and almost it's almost idiotic, honestly. The same PS, the same principal secretary who was in the ministry when we were working on NEMIS is the same one who's abandoning it and going to chemis. Are you driven really by reform or you are driven by rent seeking? So you abandon that and go to a new arrangement. All those resources gone. When we worked on Huduma Number, we actually decided to go about it in a budget-sensitive manner, working with the National Intelligence Service. I don't think Kenyans know, and I don't think I'm revealing anything here, that when Dilaru was here, Dilaru had built capability and resources here with the government printer that were going to waste. After scouting that with the security sector, we reduced the budget of working on Huduma Number, acquired some of the resources of Dilaru, with the National Intelligence Service, build our own capability to generate and even print cards. By the time we were leaving government, we had synchronized data and printed 13 million. All the government needed to do is to continue that exercise. They abandoned that to go and attend a new project all over. Passport issuance program, we had worked on a beautiful arrangement. We were going on, we had gotten to a point where we had reduced the issuance of passports to 1 day. And the system was working. Abandon it, go to procure another system. All this wastage of resources is intended to provide rent-seeking opportunities. Issue a new tender so that you can make money, have new people to provide services. Because if your intention really is to correct that, something that has gone wrong, how is it that we are all Kenyans and we are here, we have not gone anywhere? What is wrong with calling us and telling us you were the Minister for Interior? Kibicho, you are the Minister of PS Interior. what happened with this Huduma number? How can we improve it? We have noticed this and these gaps. How can we improve them? Because if you are patriotic, you're interested in solving the problems, you want to resolve the challenges of your country. Why can't you call the other Kenyans who are in that office and have a conversation with them and tell them we have these gaps? How can we improve this system without spending any more money on our new system?
So then what
all these procurements are being done because of rent seeking. So there is no way we are going to manage our debt situation, manage our expenditures, if we are not cognizant of the fact that there is too much wastage, too much corruption, too much pilferation. And the result of this is that we are just basically, accumulating debt after debt.
So how do you stop it? And this is the question,
Yes.
because how do you get into the system and then be the one that changes the color of the water, as opposed to then not allowing it to seep in? And I say this because look around the world. Look from the Philippines to Indonesia to on this side, Brazil. You mentioned some countries in Africa. Look at the other day, Nicolas Sarkozy goes to prison for 5 years. What is common in all of these individuals who have been sentenced to jail terms, prison terms? They've defrauded their governments when they had an opportunity to administer some level of authority or some kind of governmental discipline. They will serve time in prison. You would never imagine, but it's going to happen. In some cases, it's already happening. So what's to say that Fred Matiang'i becomes president of the country and this water doesn't get into you, but that you are the one who colors the water?
First of all, before we go to consequences for action, let's focus on resolving the problem. I don't think I need more than 12 months to clean up the data universe in the education sector, because that's one of our problems. So that what we were working on when I was in Jogo was we want to know every child where they are, so that when we are doing transfers to schools, we are transferring resources to children who exist. I saw the other day a senior government officer saying they have discovered there are 50,000 ghost students or whatever it is, and then they transferred money to everybody, including those 50,000 ghost students. Why would you do that? Just ask yourself the question. Kenya is the digital capital of Africa. How on earth can we say that we cannot account for all the kids we have wherever they are in the school? Do we need more than one full academic year to ensure that we have all the data of all the students we have in school and where they are?
And if I may ask on that particular point, because we somehow are befuddled about that particular issue as well, that this system, this chemist, it sits somewhere, but it's administered essentially by the Ministry of Education, right? That the Ministry of Education will know the schools registered. They will know the students registered because they are accorded a number. Everybody has a number which is in the system. Is it possible that money goes to schools, money goes under capitation to students without the knowledge of anybody in the ministry? Because this is one of the things that needs fixing.
You know, honestly, for every bit of these jokes that you see, there is rent-seeking behind it. Because I don't understand how, when we started fixing examination cheating, we insisted every candidate must have a UPI, unique personal identifier.
Yes.
And in fact, that is how we managed to deliver examination results in record time, because every child has got a UPI. When we go to print papers, I had gotten to a point where we insisted that we print an examination paper for a specific student. So that if we are going to the printer and it's a security printer somewhere outside the country, we are printing an examination paper for Dennis Okari, because already Dennis Okari has registered and they have a UPI which is called an index number. Now, I'm not able to understand, the excuses that are being given. That's why I normally say they can't make sense even to a fool, because I'm not able to understand how I can have a system that I manage myself. Then I say there are 50,000 ghost people in it. Because then what are you actually doing? Or what are you telling people you are doing? And you can see through these jokes. I'm calling them jokes because they don't make sense to anybody. Kenya, of all countries, you walk to any country, even in the Gulf states, in Doha, in Dubai, in any particular ICT department, the Kenyans are the majority in that group. With all the training we have done and so on, the capacities we have in the country, how can we be debating on such basic things and so on? So again, it goes back to that philosophy of doing the right thing. Within 12 months, you can clean up and mop up and make sure that every child in school, wherever they are, from early childhood level to university have got a UPI, and you have a system that manages this data. When you are transferring resources, you are transferring to existed students, and there's a system of removing those who either pass away, and you can track the student. The intention of NEMIS was that every child has got only one number that they use from the beginning of the education to the PhD level, if they wanted to go for PhD, so that we can actually know the resources that we are spending on each of these students as we go along. Now, when it was shunted aside and a new system introduced, and that's why you're hearing all these jokes and all these excuses you're hearing. The whole intention behind it, to be honest with you, in my view, I do not want to speculate and impute improper motive. It's just that I'm not able to understand what that is. How can you run a system and then say there are ghost students in it and so on? When we went to register the police, when we started the digitalization of the police records, and then we discovered ghost police officers, is because when I was asking Boynet at that time, how many police officers do you have? Can you tell from your office which police officers have served for 10 years in one station? He couldn't. Because we had, and I can reveal this today, because we had a problem in Nyaya House with the challenges of the passports and so on, and discovered there are police officers who had served around Nyaya House there for 16 years. They had almost lived there. So they could manage the system and so on and so forth. So we worked on that arrangement. That time Gabo was the Deputy Inspector General Police in charge of administration police. Reorganized the place, digitize the police records and so on, so that you know every police officer where they are, so that I can walk into the office in the morning, or I can ask the Inspector General, because police don't report to me, they report to the IG, and query the data. Tell me how many women police officers are deployed in Nairobi. He can give you the data. Tell me how many women police officers are deployed in Nakuru. He can give you the information and so on. That is how modern government operates. Unless and until we achieve that level of efficiency in the manner in which we are managing public resources, we will continue to suffer the wastage that we are suffering right now.
And you will be compromised? I say this because, and that was part of the original question that I asked, how do we know that Fred Matiang'i will not go and drink the water, but in this case will go in and color the water? People have stood on Afia House steps and said, I'm going to go into this place, I'm going to change it. People have told Kenyans over and over again, give me 100 days. By the time 100 days are over, the thing is going to be squeaky clean. We're going to shine this thing, you can see a reflection in the... we've heard it all. What's different, and how do we know? Because we've been told Parliament is a lawmaking body, but then somehow people walk through the doors of Parliament, drink the Kool-Aid, and then they're drunk on rent-seeking. People say I will be the right person and I can handle this thing, and then they go quiet. As a church mouse, we don't hear from them for 5 years. What's going to be different? Because Kenya is in problems.
Because no one can compromise me. Simple as that. No one can compromise me. But 10 years I was in government. If you look at the resources I presided over, almost 2 trillion shillings in budget. That I ran the big ministries. I ran the Ministry of Education, I ran the Ministry of Interior. In 2017, across the elections, I was both the Minister for Education and Minister for Interior for about 7 months or so. No one can compromise me. That is beyond me completely. No one. And you record this today and hold me to account after I become president. No one can compromise me. I am not interested. I'm not looking for this job because I'm looking for money. Because if I wanted money, I would go elsewhere and then look for money and leave comfort and do other things. I'm not looking for this because I'm looking for money. Not because I wouldn't love money and so on, but I think I've come to a point in my life where I'm beyond those types of things. No interest about flashing money around, the kind of conspicuous consumption I see, and opulent display of resources and so on, which is just brought us on primitivity, is not the kind of thing I would go into myself. So no one. I can tell you that for a fact. No one can compromise me. Everybody told me when I was in Jogo House, when I arrived, everybody told me you can't fight cartels. In the examination cheating sector. In fact, most of all, they told me you can't fight cartels in the textbook distribution industry. 2 years later, when I left, we had achieved 1-to-1 textbook pupil ratio in the country, and we are studied around the world for that, for that achievement. So no one can compromise me.
So when people talk about cartels, because we've had cartels in the education sector, we've had cartels in the health sector, where it's a CS who's at the very top saying that, I'm going to change this, I'm going to do this. We are currently talking about SHA, and the promise was it's going to work for everybody. But 3 years later, it's total confusion. There's a lot of money being paid to hospitals that do not even exist. Some of the names you trace, it's a bush, a hospital that doesn't exist but has received millions and millions in terms of claims. This question of cartels that work around government, regardless of who is the leader, because you've worked in two critical dockets in government. Who are these people? How do they operate? How do they hold hostage somebody who's a policymaker at the very top? In this case, is a CS, or even the president for that matter. Or are they a creation then from the person who is at the helm? What is it?
You see, Dennis, the inconvenient truth that we and again, you guys in the media, I want to challenge you on this matter. The inconvenient truth that people do not discuss about the way we have managed public affairs in our country is that the power of money and corruption has invaded our political practice like a malignant cancer. Almost everybody bribes everybody. To get along, you have to, do all manner of crazy things. And because of that, we have systematically created an environment where, to be honest with you, if I were to be very sincere and tell you this, unless we get to this point and say we are cutting this cycle, I don't see how we are going to save our country. And that's where all this begins. And because of that, many people go into public office because they are looking for money. They want to make money, buy big things, properties, drive Range Rovers, and so on and so forth. And then the low level, it starts first of all with political accountability. The low level of political accountability. When people turn up, their constituencies, I ask myself this question: what did you think when you were electing this guy as your MP? What did you think? And how did you hope you are going to be saved? Because a guy came and told you, queue here, he gave you 1,000 shillings. And you never even asked him, where is the money from? Because you see, what would you have done when you are in your 30s to have enough money to give 40,000 people 1,000 shillings each? I gave this example when I was at the National Council for Administration of Justice retreat in Naivasha of a candidate who, at that particular time, because I was Minister for Interior, I could see, I could access the records of Interpol, a parliamentary candidate in Nairobi whose name was on the watch list of the Interpol. And this is a candidate, this is the person who was going across butcheries in his constituency in Nairobi and just paying anyone who wanted to come and take meat. He just pays for all the meat. He will come and take your share and go away, and so on. Now, when people are doing all that, they don't ask themselves this simple question: what is the end game here? Because you see, you're doing this. When that fellow goes into office, he's going to look for an opportunity to make more of that money, because that is not his money. There are people who go to the villages and introduce themselves. Oh, this is a businessman in Nairobi. He doesn't tell people what business they do and where, with what investment. Some of these people you have seen around, the so-called empowerment campaign going on around the country. These fellows are flying helicopters, 9 helicopters, what have you, to a place they arrive. Some of these guys were giving 300,000, 400,000. That is definitely not their money. Because what were they doing? One of them was a guy who was a struggling lawyer the other day who probably could not even pay rent before he became an MP. Now he's the one giving 500,000, 600,000. The money is the proceeds of corruption. So all of us, especially you guys in the media, all of us must face this. Unless we address this issue, we are not going to resolve our problem. And yes, Dennis, those are now the cartels. So that the money is ring-fenced even at the budget-making process. Oh, this road is going to be done this way. Let's look for this contractor and so on. Investigate. Just check what happens and so on. So unless this is addressed succinctly and clearly, it is not going to work. And the best way to address it is not to enact new laws, is not to build new institutions. Because we have enough laws, we have institutions, we can't create institutions eternally. What we need are people who will go into those offices who will say no. As Tony Blair says, the art of leadership is saying no. Yes is very easy to say. Saying no to this, I will not take this, I will not accept this, and so on. And when people are telling me this in Joe House, I told them, let us go and try. And I am the one who's paid to be here. I'm not making excuses. I will drive into schools and ask the bazaar, show me.
You as president?
I will ask. There's no way I cannot go. That's my responsibility. If I'm not able to serve the people, what stops me as president from going to Kenyatta National Hospital? That is my territory. That is the responsibility I have. People cannot be queuing there the whole day, for example, or seeking a service they can't get, and I'm lying about it and making excuses. I will not be told stories about service provision, service centers. I'll walk into Nya House at the passport place and ask somebody, how long have you been waiting for your passport?
You've just talked about the Kenyatta National Hospital, and we just segue into the healthcare situation in the country. We have SHA. And at the formation of this service, 104 billion shillings has been spent to come up with this new system. But you talk to Kenyans and accessing healthcare has become a problem. If you get there, how would you fix the healthcare situation in the country? Because Kenyans are getting sick but not getting the service that they pay for.
Dennis, universal healthcare has been the dream of this country since independence. Every government tries to approach it their own way. What lacks this time is, you see, I'm not able to understand. We were carrying out a very far-reaching and radical reforms to the National Hospital Insurance Fund, backed by the World Bank. We abandoned them, just like that, and said, let us begin with SHA and SHE. What shocks me is that the leaders of that sector are not able to look you in the face, look cameras, and answer that question I said. Because the basic policy question every minister must answer is this: what are you doing and why are you doing it? They're not able to tell you, we left these reforms we're working on NHIF because of ABCD. We have now come here because of ABCD. Our anticipation is that we go forward and do this. It's all what I may call systems kiting, You're buying this software, bringing this company and so on and so forth, and it's billions upon billions upon billions. Some of the leaders in that sector are shareholders in the companies that are involved in provision of those services. Surely, how much more foolish can we be as a society? And the services are not being provided. You see, when you raise these issues, the administration or those in the administration think, you are fighting government. There is no fight. The facts are there to speak for themselves. Let us solve this nonsense. Because Wananchi, the best example, the best way of getting feedback. Everywhere I go to public meetings, I ask them, is this working? The answer you get is a resounding no. So if you are yourself the minister or the president for that matter, how can you be defending something? The people you lead out there who are supposed to be experiencing your services tell you they are not getting it. So how can you insist the service is there? And those who receive it are saying it is not there. So who do you believe? I mean, it's like you insist that your children have food in the house. You have never bought any food and so on. And then you insist, no, they are fine. When you go there, they are starving. And you ask them, have you eaten the last 2 days? No. And then you insist, no, those kids are not serious. There is enough food.
So how critical is for the voice of Kenyans to be heard? Because for a very long time, public participation has always been a suggestion, even on matters to do with SHA and healthcare. Kenyans are saying it is not working, but government says it is working. So in government, in terms of feedback mechanism from Kenyans, how critical is it to pick that and fix the flaws that your citizens are telling you?
You see, if government is interested, they can do that. In cases where they are not interested in fixing the problem, they continue doing what they are doing. And that is why they spend time calling delegations and bribing them. You know what we have now in the country is government by bribery. You bribe people. What do you bribe your citizens when you are working for them? I mean, they know what you are doing. Governments run on their track record. Incumbent governments run on their track record. I say this, and I'm repeating it here today for all and sundry to hear, that if government was delivering services, Wananchi would be telling us leaders in the opposition, hey, Jameni, why don't you give these guys one term so that they can complete this project? Why, hold on, give them time to, where. So, because everywhere you go, Wananchi asks, give them time to do what? That is it. Incumbent government run on their track record. So, this administration spends tons and tons of money on bloggers, on propaganda, on paying bloggers to lie, and character assassinate the leaders in the opposition and so on. They wouldn't be doing that if they were providing the services. And I've often said, by the way, and I hope one day I'll have an opportunity to discuss some of these issues, especially on feedback. I don't know, I can advise them for free. They would spend less money, they will have less stress by doing the right thing and listening to Wananchi. Just get your work done and listen to Wananchi. That's all. So these stories. And I tell people, onyesha kazi bwana, onyesha kazi, show us the work so that we stop talking about what you're doing. So these good people have got to step up and understand that feedback is very important. But because they don't care about that feedback, why would they be bribing people in villages with the 64 shillings, 100 shillings, flying all over the place, giving people money? If you're working, if you're confident of yourself as government, why would you be bribing people? Huddling people in a place and room, giving them money, bringing delegations, bringing teachers.
Well, it's empowerment money. They're empowering the youth.
You got it right. Yeah. Your answer is as good as mine. that is it.
Right. So as we hear these things, I mean, there seems to be so much that is not working at the moment, and not just seems to be, that is a reality on the ground. And so what is required, in your opinion, to fix everything that's not working at the moment and stop new projects? We saw that in a previous administration, that very thing happened, that all of this new project, new funding was put to a halt and things were sorted out, and we actually saw the economy grow. It's documented. Do you think that's the way to go, and how would you go about it?
I am lucky or fortunate to have been through Executive Order number 1 of 2019. I became the chair of the coordination of cabinet affairs, especially projects and our investment in the country, which gave me a very unique and unparalleled opportunity to every week sit with all my cabinet colleagues to look at the government investment and government projects across what was doing well, what was not doing well, and so on. The first thing is focus. You know, as government, you focus on what needs to be done, making a decision on what you will focus on. The classic example is the education sector. President Mwai Kibaki came to power. He focused on enrollment and access. He wanted to make sure all kids in Kenya accessed education and they were enrolled. That is how he came up with free primary education, 1 million kids in school, and we continued. In a decade, by the time Uhuru Kenyatta was becoming president, Kibaki's kids, as we used to call them, had come now to secondary schools. They needed more places. Uhuru started focusing on retention and completion, that these kids stay in the education system and they complete so that we don't engage in wastage. What is the focus of this administration? I don't know. You see, in every sector of the economy, you must make a decision, first of all, as government. What are you going to focus on? Because this is the reality of life, and let us just be frank with each other. You cannot do everything. There's no government anywhere on earth that will wake up in the morning and within a space of 5 years or a space of 10 years do everything they can do to make everyone happy. That is why we go to elections every other time to renew mandate or get a new government so that we continue on a particular trajectory. Vision 2030 was supposed to be a collective involving all-inclusive framework of developing the country. So we are supposed to look at that and say, okay, our challenge now is we have introduced a new education system. We are now focusing on skills for development and transforming the way we train for the 21st century. That is the focus. So what are we then going to do in this case to achieve what we're doing? So if you narrow down your focus to the things that you need to do, you look at the security sector, our current challenges are these. So how do we move to the next level? Focus is very important. If you ask me to be very honest with you, and if leaders of the administration want to be sincere about it, there's only one word you can use to describe their public policy infrastructure: chaotic. Yeah,
needed.
Chaotic. You from the hustler fund to I don't know what, everything. So sometimes you don't know whether the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. So when there's lack of focus in a case like that, you are not likely to run a government effectively. 2. And Uhuru Kenyatta summarizes it very well. He says in corporate world, in the private sector, we always look at the bottom line at the end of the trading year. In public service, we look at the welfare line. Are the people better today than they were last time? What can I do to address the welfare of these people? So sporadic actions that are uncoordinated and focused and so on will not lead you to having the sum total of improved welfare of the citizens. So you again look at the welfare of the people you deal with. Are you overburdening these people? Are you providing respite for their earnings to grow so that you can move forward? And this is not rocket science. This is something that is critical. And thirdly, which I think are very important, You know, in a democracy, it is governance by deliberation. People don't have to necessarily experience good governance. They need to be part of that particular process. You see, a government whose leaders swear at the people they lead, you know, that doesn't work. It's a case where it's government by deliberation. Parliament has a critical role to play, and sometimes even the executive branch of government should challenge Parliament itself, or even use Parliament as an avenue to ventilate and deal with some of the issues that have happened in a country. We engage directly with private sector players, so the society feels that you are driving in the same direction, as it were, because stability does not come from absence of conflict or absence of challenges in the country. Stability comes from contentment, people feeling involved, and so on. When President Kibaki was sworn into office in 2002, the Afrobarometer Index showed that Kenyans were some of the happiest people in the world. He had done nothing in 2 or 3 months, and people were happy. Why they were feeling happy is that they felt involved. They felt that their role was recognized. They felt that when they raised questions, they were answered. The feedback that Dennis talks about, that the feedback was treated seriously. How can a government insist that we are doing so well? It is you who doesn't understand what we are doing. And I mean, are we all a nation of fools? It's not possible. So when all these things are done...
Well, in that regard, President Ruto, in this case, there was a point in time where he actually talked about this, and it was clear he was frustrated that the cabinet secretaries who were managing these different dockets were not articulating or communicating what government was doing, and therefore leading to the confusion and the lack of knowledge or information that people had. And he said he knew more about some of the line ministries than the people who are actually supposed to be the managers themselves.
You know, I am very respectful of people. William Ruto is the president of the Republic of Kenya. There is language I cannot use. But let me tell you the truth. That kind of statement and that admission is astounding, to say the least. Who appoints those ministers?
The president.
So how can I come here and complain to you about my appointees? And unangoja firimbi ya nani to sack them, and to discipline them, to demand of the standards for them, and so on. How can you, I mean, that in itself, to be honest with you, if you took it and write a paper, you can write a nice paper on the tradition and the ecosystem of conduct of public affairs in the administration. From that alone, you can write a paper. Because it tells you many things. There is no way the head of state can tell you he understands more about the ministries than the people he has appointed. Maybe it is the ecosystem issue. I can only talk about a cabinet I served under and a president I served under, because it was constant debate, it was constant engagement. Sometimes we would agree with I would disagree with my president on a number of things. He would give me an opportunity to express myself. He would give my colleagues an opportunity to express themselves, and he would be willing to, come to a middle ground, and even sometimes vacate his position if he didn't have all the information you had. In some cases, there are areas where you cannot negotiate with the president because it's a singular position under the constitution. When he takes certain decisions, especially on security and so on, you comply because it's the head of state. But he explains to you respectively, this is why I've done this is why I need to do this, and so on. You're my program officer for that particular department. I want ABCD. How can you come around and say that if you have incompetent people, they are not your children. Your children are the ones you cannot part with because they are your children. You give birth to them or you put them. How can you complain about an incompetent cabinet? And you are the one who appointed it.
So in all this, Dr. Fred, if you said you would want to get that opportunity, and if you get it, you would want to serve Kenyans as the president, but you can't work alone. You have to work with people. So at the moment, are you part of what is now being referred to as the united opposition? Are you part of them?
Yes.
We've had instances where they have accused you of being a mole. You've worked closely with the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta.
Somebody's project.
They've said you're a government project. We've actually hosted people who are working closely with the top leadership of the united opposition, that is Rigathi Gachagua, former deputy president. And if you are part of the united opposition, and people have also questioned, the Gen Zs, to be specific, have said, you know what, we want to do with this old guard. We are tired of the same faces that we've seen. Some of us were born when some of these people who say that they will take our country to a different trajectory were in power. They served as ministers. They served as deputy presidents, for example. Some of them have integrity questions. Some of them served and there were corruption allegations, but they have all come together as part of a united opposition. When you say you are now with them, how does that settle with you, with all these issues notwithstanding?
Thank you for that question, Dennis. You know, the truth of the matter is this. Kenyans, everywhere you go, and I've had, since I came back from the bank at the end of August, early September is when my contract ended, I've had numerous meetings with Kenyans across the board, all walks of life and so on. In fact, before I made the decision to come and run for president, I had numerous meetings with people. Sometimes I tell people, I ask myself whether I want to run for president or I'm being dragged by the collar by some sections of the country to go and run for president. Kenyans want the opposition or the people outside of government to work together. And they work together not because they are holy or they have arrived from heaven, but because of one single objective: to try and give Kenya a better government, an alternative government. So I don't think the opposition is going to be like the Vatican with bishops and priests. It is just going to be the opposition that reflects Kenya. And human beings, leaders who come from various walks of life, who have different experiences, different talents, different histories, and different strengths to bring together. Essentially, what the country is looking forward to is to bring together this tapestry of experience, background, whatever, and then try to give Kenya an alternative government. I understand the impatience of Kenyans. You know, when you have an administration that has performed the way this has done, the frustrations that Kenyans have every day, I understand when they behave sometimes like they would like things to happen tomorrow. You know, they wish that the opposition came together tomorrow, hammered out everything tomorrow, and then from there, created government. But and unfortunately, in reality, that's not how it works. The unity of opposition or the unity of purpose is going to happen in spite of the differences of opinion, differences of background, differences of age, differences of experiences, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, if it was a very easy matter, people would meet in a room one day. By the evening, they have told you this is going to be our opposition leader and so on. That is also another joke that I don't think the country should be taken through. It is going to be a painstaking experience of aligning visions, harmonizing perspectives, and so on. So that process, that integrative process, will also be a process of team building and creating an infrastructure that will alleviate some of the governance pains of this country.
But why will they call you a government project or a mole?
Well, you see, I'll explain. I don't know why, but I'll explain my case. As for whether or not, I'm someone's project, I cannot rewrite history. I served as a cabinet minister under President Uhuru Kenyatta. As to whether or not that makes me his project, honestly, it's just splitting hairs at the end of the day, because people will say that, and then they say that, you are Uhuru's project, and they themselves are looking for the same Said Uhuru to talk to, and so on. I saw here when President Kenyatta went to State House to attend discussions on DRC Congo on behalf of the East African community. State House stopped everything they were doing that day and filled the social media with pictures. I think every single gesture, turn, nuance, and everything of
meant that there was a partnership
House,
in the offing.
It was all over social media and so on, in some very, desperado type approach. That is the same Uhuru that they are talking about. And in any case, by the way, everybody knows Uhuru was a successful president. Who wouldn't want to be associated with a successful president? But as to whether or not I am his project, that is the common gossip and
But is it true?
Nonsense. Yeah.
But is it true?
I'm not running for president because Uhuru told me to run for president. I took a decision to run for president. And there could be 3 or 4 other people in his cabinet, like Wamalwa, who are ministers with me in the same cabinet, who are interested in the presidency. So who is the project? Why am I the project and not Wamalwa? Because you see, Wamalwa was Minister for Defense, I was Minister for Interior in the same cabinet. The current president was his deputy. Probably would be more a project than myself, because if ranking is the issue, he would be more the project than me. And I keep asking people every day, after I left the government, I went and took up a contract. I hired on a competitive basis, who did not take me there. I was hired on a competitive basis, took up a contract with the bank, worked on it and finished, came back. How is it that nobody is saying I'm the bank's project?
Indeed.
Because that is where...
Well, the association also with his party, Jubilee Party is what they refer to. Why wouldn't Fred Matiang'i form his own party? Like Rigathi Gachagua went formed his own party. You have Wamala who has his own party. Kalonzo has his own party. Martha Karua has his own party. Justin Muturi has his party. Everybody around has his party apart from Dr. Fred Matiang'i.
But you see, again, how is it that the flip side of that argument is this? How is it that you're not crediting me for consistency? I served in the Jubilee administration under Jubilee president, implemented Jubilee policies. Why would I walk away from them now and go to articulate other policies? I believed in them then, I believe in them now. I believed in that system of management, I believe in it now. The flip side of it is that, how is it that you're not looking at my consistency, that I am consistent? I did not say things then that I will regret today. That what I told the Kenyans then and how I worked then is how I would like to continue working. Because the flip side of it is to look at the consistency of it. That I am consistent in the manner in which I do stuff. I have remained faithful to the public service journey that I have walked. I have not changed. I'm not flip-flopping. Today I'm talking Jubilee, tomorrow I'm talking other things. How is it that you are not crediting me for consistency in an environment where some of these people you are talking about have jumped parties 6, 7, 8 times, and that doesn't even make them, any better.
Yeah. Speaking of, you stick to policies and you stick to issues, but of course, the tribal card comes into play here at some point, and somehow you've managed to stay away from such leanings. Is there an importance when tribal politics comes into play, and are you leaning in that direction?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. Because you see, why would I do that? You see, okay, I don't like spending time talking about myself and so on. You look at my working life. Except the 10 years I worked in the public service, most of my working life has been in the international environment. I have done interviews where I am hired by people who are not even Africans in the first place. I submit myself to an interview process. I have been supervised by people who are not even Africans and filed reports. Some of the positions I've held before, I wouldn't survive if I didn't perform. And then the people who are supervising me were not from my tribe or even my country for that matter or my region. So I'm not socialized in my career, and the things I've done before and how I've worked have not been socialized in an environment where the seminal place of tribe and region is that important. When I left government in 2022 after the elections, I applied for a job at the bank. I was interviewed twice for the job. In fact, the second interview, there wasn't even an African on the panel. And I believe that what we are seeking is to provide a contribution, and that contribution you can make because of how God has endowed you with the ability that you have to make it. Because honestly speaking, whatever people do, and indeed for that reason, I am not, the right person because I don't hang on tribes and so on. So be it. Because you see, they mean nothing at the end of the day. My tribe never changed. I was the same one as the Minister of Education. I'm the same one today. I was the same one as the Minister of Interior. I'm the same one today. When I fought digital migration, nobody cares to even ask the question, what would have happened if we had not migrated at that time? Look at our digital environment in the country today. I was the same tribe. I've never changed my tribe. But what drove me then, now, and always is get something done. Get some work done. And when you go, there's no job anywhere you will do tennis. Wherever you are going to be hired, especially in the international environment, you're not hired and told, okay, we have hired you today as the regional director for SUNY, or the regional representative for SUNY in East and Southern Africa. Now, please come with your staffers. Bring your secretary, bring your accountant and everybody. You are hired, you turn up in that environment. And you find these people, the guy from Ghana is your program manager, this fellow from South Africa is, the fellow from Zimbabwe is this and so. You sit there and get some work done. And then you find a way of making things happen in that particular environment. You imagine an institution like the bank. You are not told, okay, now we have hired you. What you do, can you come from Nairobi or from Keroka with your staffers? You are just given a job and people expect the results from you, and they will assess you and they will deal with you on the basis of the results that you register.
But that's different from our politics, isn't
You
it?
see, the question is, we are dealing with a population that is fast resisting that nonsense. Because you see, if you look at our younger people in this country, especially the Gen Zs, that thing called tribe doesn't matter to them. They're asking for results. They're asking for things to be done. Everywhere I go, when I meet these young people, I was in a meeting in Minnesota, meeting Kenyans. Then a nice young woman was invited from the audience, and there is no way on earth I would have known who she is. All I knew is that she was Kenyan because it was a Kenyan meeting. And she went to the mic and said, I was a Form 4 student when you were CS Education. I went to Moi and Nairobi Girls. I was thoroughly impressed by what happened at that time, and you will have my vote, especially because if you do the same things the way you did them at that particular time. What does that tell me? It tells me that all Kenyans actually are looking for services. And then why are you hiding in your tribe? And how is it that it's only in politics where this makes sense? When you go to Nairobi Hospital and you are sick, I've given these people an example all the time. Would you look at the board and say, let me see if my tribesman is on duty today before I'm treated? And say, oh, there is no doctor. I can look at the names. There is no doctor from my tribe. I'm walking away. And you are sick. You arrive there because you want to be treated.
Yes.
So you go there, the fellow, sometimes you don't even know the tribal background of the nurse who's dealing with you.
Indeed. We want to hear that you will come again. We've done 2 hours and you didn't even know it. And that's how time flies. There's still a year ahead and there's a lot of talking to Kenyans to be done. Can we have you come again?
No problem. I will gladly do when you give me an opportunity, because, I can't seek to lead people I do not talk to or listen to. And I would like to see your views. And if there are any questions members of the public have asked that I have not answered, I can curate them. I always answer them through the social platforms that we have, or when I come next time, I can answer them. I'm willing, ready, and available to respond to any issues that arise, because, that is the staff of public leadership. And I remember that today is election day in Tanzania.
Yes.
I'm very, very worried and frustrated by the declining level of democracy in the region and the kind of things we are seeing happening in the region. I hope that our brothers and sisters in Tanzania, get what they deserve and that democracy takes root. We should not be happy when, people in our neighborhood are having challenges. And as I said, whether it's about Boniface Mwangi and Agatha being mistreated in Tanzania, or Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo disappearing in Uganda, or whether it's Musandu's death that we have not unraveled and conclusively investigated in Kenya, as long as God gives us life, we should strive always to make tomorrow a better day than today. And I hope that, the elections in Tanzania go the right way, although all of us must be concerned about the declining levels of democracy, the abuse of freedoms, and so on in the region. And then, by the way, you should have given me an opportunity, but I don't think we have the time to comment about the new cyber laws.
Indeed. We don't have time. That means you must come much faster.
Yeah.
But let the time not be too long between the next time you come. But we've got to thank you for being here this morning. Appreciate then being able to have this discourse with you and put to task some of the issues that Kenyans are really concerned about in terms of who's going to be their next leader. Dr. Fred Matiang'i, thank you for being here on the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning. Asante sana. Till the next time, everybody. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.